Do you wish to play a cozy RPG where you are traveling the lands of a storybook fantasy world and exploring it together with your friends, collaboratively telling this story and trying to find a place to call home? Well, then you'll like the game that we are talking about today on the RPG Goblin as we talk about Wanderhome, a TTRPG that is best described as a cozy game. If you love the moments when playing TTRPGs where you are role playing with your friends and discovering new places and meeting NPCs and new people, and you don't like combat, then you will absolutely love Wanderhome, as that is what this game is about, and it is absolutely beautiful. Now, I brought on Jay from Magpie Dice to talk about Wanderhome with, so I think we should just get into it. I am very excited because we are going to be talking about a video game, like a cozy video game word RPG. This is what we're talking about, Wanderhome. Uh, it is a narrative, comfy, cozy game, and I am so excited to talk about it with Jay here, who has actually played it. I've only read some of the book. And I guess this is where, Jay, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jay, also known as Magpie to a lot of people. I am the owner of Magpie Dice Co., where I make dice and gush about my characters occasionally on stories.
Of course. Also, very beautiful dice.
Thank you. I'm trying.
But yeah, so I can't, we did like a test recording before we did our first ever recording for this podcast. And in that test recording, Jay mentioned the RPG Wanderhome to me. And during that conversation, I was so interested in what this was. And so I decided that we have to like record an episode about it. So here we are doing that. And I guess kind of the first thing I want to talk about is the base setting and what like Wanderhome is. And like I said, it's a very narrative game, but from someone who has experience with playing the game itself and probably reading more of the book than I have, how would you describe the base game and the setting to someone who has never heard of it before?
Yeah, so the setting of the game, throughout the game, you get to come up with locations. But the general setting, I think, is very similar to like a storybook fantasy.
Yes.
Like, you know, your little fantasy fairy tales as kids with all the little animal stories. It's very similar to that in my mind. Of course,
I
you
can
get to make up
absolutely see
settings.
that.
Yeah, you make up the specific locations as you go, but I believe it's called Haith is the world name.
Yes, I believe
Uh,
so.
yeah, so it gives me very, fantasy fairy tale vibes. Um,
Yes.
and as for the game itself, it reminds me a lot of just children's imagination games. Like, you're on the playground, you're in like third grade, and you're playing a game with your friends. You come up with your own characters, you also come up with other characters, and you just make things up as you go.
Mhm.
It feels very akin to that. Just make believe, pretend, cozy games.
Exactly. I completely agree. And the big thing about Wanderhome is it is extremely rules light from what I've read.
Oh
Like
yeah.
like when I say and like when we're saying narrative and like imagination, it is purely that. I think the only thing that's really, I mean, you've got the playbooks, which are essentially like your class, like quote unquote classes, the equivalent of that in this book, and like tokens. But that's like really it for like things that would be structure and rules, which I find very fascinating, especially if all you've played is very structured games like D&D and in
Yeah.
Pathfinder and things like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a book of guidelines basically and just
yes.
suggestions, and it's like, here are some things you can do. Now make something up. Lean into your childhood creativity and imagination.
Absolutely. And it like right off the bat, Wanderhome, like that is how it introduces itself. That is how it sets the tone for the game. It like starts off with this kind of hope. It starts off with like this poetic like intro, and it's all about like the journey. And even throughout the book it says that this isn't like a heroic story or anything. This is the journey of people, and the journey that like you're going on, but like other people are going on, and like the journey's larger than just you, and like you're contributing to it. And it's amazing, honestly. Like it's full of wonder and like fantasy and just like beauty. And
Yeah,
it's
it's collaborative storytelling at its finest, I
yes,
think.
it does it very well as well, which like for something with not a lot of structure, sometimes they don't give you or games that do that, where it's like, oh, a collaborative story game where they're very rules light, nothing really, not too much there, but they don't give you a lot to go off of. And it can be like, oh, like then, why did I get the book if it's just like, do whatever you want. Wanderhome, though, like I think so far from what I've seen, does it so well. It gives structure there, but still enough openness of like you can do whatever you want. It just gives structure of what like the tone and what like the kind of journeys and the kinds of things that will be happening in this game, because that's what it is. Like it gives
Yeah.
that tone and it gives enough structure that it does it very well. It does the narrative, like collaborative narrative storytelling, very well.
Yeah, and the structure, what little structure there is a lot of just suggestions
Mhm.
where it's like, these are some things that you to start you off. Like, here are some animals that you could pick. You can choose something completely different. There's a bunch of traits and things that you can go off of. So I think it's really built for people who want to get into that imagination again, but are kind of stuck. It guides the way into giving you that creative freedom, because sometimes when you go from things like D&D or Pathfinder, you're like, I don't know what to do. And it gives you suggestions and small guidelines to start with, and then it sets you free to do whatever you want from there.
Absolutely. And like my something that I love, and this is we'll cover this a little bit later. Um, but it talks in the book about empowering like the players to be comfortable with making bold decisions and choices. I love that so much. I love that as like someone who, when I started to play RPGs like at the beginning, that was something I struggled with for a very long time. And then I got more comfortable, especially once I started to DM. This, it's for the players and a DM slash or a GM slash guide, if you have one in the game, which that's a whole thing we'll talk about in a little bit. Like everyone can make these bold decisions. Anyone can add to the story and can change things like drastically and all of that, and not feel judged. Like it's very open for you to do these kinds of things, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, the way it's built is very role play, yes and style improv. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's really great with that collaborative storytelling, yes and, um, which was really great because the group that I played with, our D&D group, the characters were actually colloquially named the indecision makers. Um, so it was really
Love it.
interesting for us to pivot to something where we were all making uh, such decisions,
Mm-hmm.
um, and playing the rotating guides our usual DM did play the part of a facilitator, as well as the person who knew the game the best. So they kind of took the lead, but it was a lot of fun to rotate between things and just add to the story as we went along.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably what I'd like to talk about that more before we get into much else. In Wanderhome, there is about 4 different ways you can play. You can play in you can play without any GM or guide at all, where it is just everyone playing as characters and anyone can essentially add to the story, pick up like there's like a whole token system where you can use tokens to change the story. You can play and voice any NPC or speak for any like place that you go to during the game. That's like there's no guide. You guys are just all playing as players as a group. And then there's like Jay mentioned rotating guides, where essentially a different person is the guide for the different session or different parts of the session, and you guys just kind of rotate around the table, and whoever the guide would be, and correct me if I'm wrong, would essentially play as those NPCs and play and make the decisions for the places that you guys are traveling to.
Yeah.
The players are still able to use like the token system to be able to make changes in the areas that you're visiting and make those decisions as well, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Which I love that, again, with in games where it's like one person is like the DM or the GM or anything, they make all the decisions. The players have input, but not really in like the world and the story and stuff like that in a way that they can directly affect it. Like more so meta. It's so interesting that Wanderhome just lets the players do that, and I love it so much because again, it's just very collaborative.
Yeah.
Then another way of playing is one person who is the specific guide for the game. Only one person's the guide, and you play through with that one person being the guide, setting the locations, playing the NPCs, portraying everything like that. However, Wanderhome does say in the book, which I really like, that you can decide to play a certain way and decide to change it whenever you want. So let's say you do decide to do one guide, but then let's say halfway through the time you're playing, you're like, oh, it would be really fun to do rotating guides for this. It's very easy to kind of switch it up like that with no problems at all, because with how loose the game is, it gives plenty of wiggle room to be able to change something that would normally be really big in any other game really easily.
Yeah, it's a very chill game. You can build a bunch of beautiful relationships and role play out of it, but at the same time, it's laid back enough that you can change something very dramatically and it not be a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Which is so cool. And that's the whole big thing as well. A lot of people, at least from what I've seen, there's definitely a lot of people that are like, all I want to do is role play with my friends because I think that's really fun, which I can agree with that. I love to role play with my friends. It's very fun. And in systems like D&D or Pathfinder or any systems with combat integrated into it, you kind of have to go through those things. You have to do combat, all of that. You can still role play with your friends, but like it's bogged down by combat sometimes, and a lot of people don't like how long combat can be, all of that. Wanderhome, you can purely role play with your friends all you want and build this world and build this story and just do all of this, and that is what the game is made for.
Yeah,
It's
for
beautiful.
people who have played roleplay games and just aren't in love with the complicated systems of combat and such like that, Wanderhome is great for anyone who just wants to create a character, be in a world, and make stories with friends.
Mm-hmm. Abso-freaking-lutely. I haven't played it yet, but it makes me like, just from reading the book, it makes me want to play this game. And and the one thing that we didn't mention, you play as anthropomorphic characters. You are like humanized animals, or just
You're
like kind of
just a
animals.
little animal. You're
Yeah.
just a little guy.
And all you guys are doing is just like traveling and going on these journeys and all of that, and it's so cute and so amazing, and I want to play so bad now. um but there is one last way to play this game, and that is playing solo, which I love that this is an option for this, and honestly kind of a perfect game to do that. Such
Yeah.
as like, you would just treat it as a solo journaling RPG, just like any one that would be, made to be that way. Um, the advice that the book gave is like, if you want to play this solo, it would work perfectly fine. Have like a journal to like record what's going on. But use like dice or cards to kind of see how NPCs react, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
Um, it's super awesome that they have solo play. And yeah, those are basically the four ways. I mean, you could play this game probably more ways than that, but those are like kind of the big four ways that you can play this game. And it's crazy how flexible it is.
Yeah, and as you play, you can find a mix of those and what works best for your group. You could come up with something completely different, honestly. There's a lot of information and also a lot of flexibility.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. If like, out of all the games that I've read through, this has definitely been the most flexible, where you can just kind of do whatever you want. Because again, it's just, you play your characters, then everything else is up to you. You don't even have to play in the base setting of Haith. You can do whatever you want. You can make your own little fantasy world. It's great. Um and with that, I mean, I kind of want to talk about the characters a little bit. So you
Yeah.
play these little animal guys, and they're adorable. And like I mentioned earlier, in this game, you pick playbooks for your characters, and that's essentially who your character is. That's a representation of your character. And I would like, Jay, if you would like to maybe read out or talk about a playbook that you think is super interesting as an example, go right ahead.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of amazing playbooks. When we were starting out building characters, we built them collaboratively. So we wrote down a list of playbooks that we were interested in and then went from there. I started out, the ones that I picked out were Firelight, Fool, Moth Tender, Ragamuffin, Poet, and Pilgrim. I ended up
All good
going
ones.
with a poet, and I believe we had, we had a Moth Tender in our group. And also, we didn't have a ragamuffin. We had a vagabond. And we did have a fool, who I think came in at a later session. But they're all unique. I have the poet pulled up right now because that was the character that I ended up playing. And the description of it is, the song of the world is a poem that can be captured by ink and paper, if only you could find the right words. You are alive, your care is eloquent, observant, and occasionally overwrought.
Yes. Oh my god. The little intros to each of the playbooks kill me. They're so like whimsical and just like like adorable in like such an interesting way.
Yeah. And it gives you such great ideas. I ended up going with a poet, and I think I actually wrote a poem at some point after our first game where we were traveling. I got into a philosophical conversation with another character who was a young child, a peacock. And my character Ribbon wasn't really sure. They thought about things very differently. And that was interesting to explore. And I ended up writing a poem afterwards because I was feeling that creativity, and it really sparks something where you want to do things, you want to play. After you play, you want to continue, talk about the characters. And when you're building the characters, there's a bunch of traits that you can go through that also include a lot of soft world building that you can either use to your advantage or throw out if you're not interested in it. But some of the soft world building includes things like the nameless god slayer who once wielded the heaven blade, left to ruin in their wake, and the slobbering god, the great beast whose bones are scattered across the world. There's so many bits and pieces that you can include into your character building to discover throughout your travels and kind of shape into a story that's all your own. It can be different for every person, but these really interesting tidbits of world building are really interesting to me.
They are. I completely agree. I mean, through looking through a bunch of the playbooks was fun because they essentially have you if anyone who is listening has played a like Powered by the Apocalypse game before, where when you're building your character, you're essentially like picking your moves and check marking things, and there's even a part where it's like building a relationship with the people at the table, like a person to your left or a person to your right. You kind of decide what your relationship with that person is. These are very similar where you kind of, I have one up right now, the caretaker. And the first like question thing that you're asked is like, choose two that you value being and two that feel exhausting to you, to be. And it's just kind of a whole bunch of traits like alert, reflective, patient, friendly, expressive, like all of that. And you kind of just, that's like starting to build your character there. Like you're starting to think, what do I want my character to be perceived as? What do I want to play my character as? What do I want them not to be? Which I think is really interesting that they give you the options to pick like almost the, I don't want to be this, and the negatives as well, along with the positives.
Yeah. For the poet, there's something similar. We have a caretaker, so I remember their answers to those questions vaguely. For the poet, there are choose two things that people assume you are based on your writing, and two things that you actually are.
Which I think really is so cool, especially because in a medium of like poetry and stuff, you could assume a person is one way from the way they write. Even just writers in general, you can assume a person is away from the way they write. Yeah. And that reflects it into the game, which I think is so interesting.
Yeah. It also really encourages you to play around with gender, which I love. I remember with the caretaker, our caretaker was a pigeon named Peanut, who uses he, him pronouns, but one of the things that he mentioned it was exhausting to be is masculine. So it was interesting to play around with those sort of things in the game.
Yeah, there's definitely, and it even states it in the book itself, is like there's room to play around with like expression, like expressing yourself and expressing your character and kind of like dabbling in like the gender stuff, which is very interesting. And again, it puts it in the game in such a interesting and like soft way. Like it's just like kind of a part of it. Like what are these things? The dancer. Choose two that you are and two you wish you were better at being. And part of it's like handsome, beautiful, charismatic, honest, upbeat. Like even with like the handsome and beautiful, those are like some like gender norms that are like kind of placed into it, and they encourage you, like, do you want to rebel, or do you want to, like, how do you want to use these with your character? How do you want your character to be perceived, and how do you want them to be dealing with these kinds of thoughts, which is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that it's just built into there. Like it they don't make a big deal out of it.
Mhm.
But for someone who is genderqueer, it is a big deal to just have that representation in there.
Absolutely.
But I love that it's just intrinsically built into the game, that it's like explore yourself with these little anthropomorphic animal characters that you're making with your friends. It's very much a safe space kind of game.
It is. It's very, like, the best way is cozy and casual.
Yeah.
Like, in my head, actually, when I was reading it, a thought came up. I don't know how much other people do this, but I have a few games that I play with a group of my friends. And kind of how we prep for those games is we'll usually have, like, a conversation, like, what do we want to do, and we'll, like, start making characters. And then, like, it's a whole big thing to the lead up of the game. We'll just, like, talk about them and talk about what, like, they would do, and, like, how they're like, and what, like, effects they would have in the world, things like that. It reminds me of essentially that, just casual conversation with your friends about characters, but, like, added in roleplay,
Yeah.
essentially. And when that came to my head, I'm like, that is perfect. I want to play that, because I always enjoy those conversations with my group. It's so fun to start thinking up of those characters and, like, how they're, like, it's so fun to do that little bit. It's fun to do that world building, and then once you actually play the game, you can't really, at least in a game of, like, D&D, you can't do that as much. I mean, you can, but, like, there's only so much you can do once the DM's kind of taken more control of the story.
Yeah.
With this, it's just essentially the entire game is you having fun and, like, doing these things with your characters, and, like, what would they do? And it's beautiful. It's beautiful, and I want to play it so bad.
Yeah, it's a lovely game. And I think one thing that is important about it is that you want to have a group of people that you feel safe with.
Yes, absolutely.
That you understand and that understand you. When we were starting, we had, I think, a session of about 3 hours just going through Wanderhome, the content, what we wanted to do with it, and also safety tools like red light, yellow light, green light. All of us have been playing together for about 2 years now, so we are acutely aware of most of the things that are triggering, but it's important to us to go through safety tools. And I think that plays into Wanderhome. Even though it's a cozy game, especially our group likes to go into bigger themes and go into things that really make you think. So it was important to us to go over things like that. And I think in general with Wanderhome and its flexibility, it's really important to surround yourself with a group of people who are open and understanding.
Very, very, very true. And that is the nice thing as well, is those safety tools are mentioned in the book itself, and to talk about that. And that's why essentially a session 0, what you did, going through the book and talking about, like, what it is, and kind of getting everyone on the same page, and going through these safety things, and going through, like, what is okay, what is not, like, setting everything up, are so important. So important for any game, but especially a game where it's a bit more, I mean, it's a cozy game, and it's more intimate because of that, because it's like, you guys are just kind of hanging out. And so even in the book as well, they mention, if you are playing that when you're playing a game with your friends, it's probably easier to do, like, a rotating DM or no rotating guide or no guide. But if you're playing with a group you don't know, it's a better idea to go with a guide,
Yeah.
as kind of a mediator and someone to be there to kind of reinforce things,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
For
I
sure.
appreciated seeing that as well. Like, because it is more intimate and there are things that could be explored deeper. And even in the book, it mentions that things can, even though it's a cozy game, even in cozy games, it can get a little dark depending on what happens.
Yeah.
So as long as everyone has their session, like has the session 0, make sure everyone's on the same page and, goes over everything and make sure that everyone feels comfortable and safe.
Yeah.
Very good game.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that it is a cozy game, but allows you to explore deeper and darker themes, to
Yes.
to make it thoughtful, something that you will think about for months, even years to come.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
building an impactful story.
And I think that's what makes it even more impactful is that everyone's building it. You
Yeah.
know? Like you
Yeah.
are building this story together, like from just like almost nothing. You are just
Mhm.
deciding we are going to go on this journey and we're going to
Yeah.
play this and we're going to see what happens and we're going to do it together. And again, it's like a group project. It's so, again, it's intimate and it's very, it's definitely impactful because I can just even imagine being like just remembering and like reminiscing on stuff that would happen in this game just because there's so much
Yeah.
potential of what could happen.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah. It's something entirely different than most of the RPGs that I have read or heard about or played. It's in a category all its own.
I agree. I mean, again, it's this narrative play and I mean, it's definitely special as well in the fact that it has no combat at all. There's basically no if you're playing solo, you might have some dice rolls, but like other than that, like there's no rolling dice. It is pure narrative storytelling, all of that. So like it is definitely in its own category of just this narrative play. And I would love to find more games like that because it is so compelling, especially with world building, because world building is so much fun. And I think it's even more fun when you do it with a group.
Yeah. This is I think Wanderhome is a great place to start world building practice. If you want to be a DM, you could get together with your friends, play a couple games of Wanderhome, and get started on something that's at surface level cute, interesting, and deeper it's dynamic. There's all of those soft world building bits in the book, and it gives you a lot of ideas to where you could go in your own world building.
Absolutely. And especially because even if there's a like specific guide, other people still have their input in there. And that's what I think is also fascinating. You get the input of world building from an entire group of people. You learn what they think is cool and what they come up with, and that can change how you come up with things and how you perceive things. Because a lot of they have almost, yes, you would call them like tables you could roll on, but also just like kind of ideas for like the nature and the like places that you go to. They have like these not examples, but like words that you can pick from. The big thing
Yeah.
is that you could take the words as what they are. So like one of them is a labyrinth. You could come across a labyrinth, or you could think about it in a different way. How could this place be a labyrinth without it being a labyrinth? Like,
Yeah.
are people getting lost in this, like, whatever this place is? Are people getting lost and it's a labyrinth that way? Is it confusing? Is it like, labyrinths can also be like protected by have like guardians and protectors. Is it protected by something? Like there's a lot of different ways that you can interpret even just the ideas that they give you in the book, let alone the ideas that you could come up with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it gives you a lot of wiggle room for creativity. I know in a lot of RPGs, you'll have very specific lore that is built for locations or creatures or races, and it kind of feels sometimes like there's no way to expand on that. But Wanderhome does it really well because it gives you a very simple prompt that allows you to do whatever you want with it.
Exactly. Like exactly. And even more so, and we can go into a bit more of the world building here. Um, they suggest that you should make folklore for the
Yeah.
places you're going to. And there's even a whole thing about forgotten gods
Yeah.
in this setting, which I think is also fascinating because it's what was it again? It was the gosh, I can't remember the playbook. It's the keeper one. The caretaker. There we go. The
Yeah.
caretaker.
I was like, our caretaker had some small forgotten gods.
Yeah, the caretaker. The whole thing is so the little intro for is someone must pay attention to all the small and forgotten things in the world. Someone must listen to their voice, to the voiceless. You are alive. Your care is tender, supportive, and silent. And when you make your character and you're like filling out your playbook, one of the essentially world building and character building things you do is choose up to 5 friends that hide in the many shrines you carry with you. So you get to choose up to 5 of these little forgotten gods that you carry with you. They have a whole list, and you can also just make your own. They have like even an option, a god of your own creation. But they have this whole list of different things that you can, these different like forgotten gods that you can have like carry with you. And even from there you can build lore on top of what like where did you find these gods, what happened, and like go even deeper into that. And even because forgotten gods are also just built into the world itself, you could come across them. You could come one of the things is I think one of the like advanced kind of, I'm gonna say with quotes, moves that you can take is if you like come across some place that's like empty or abandoned, you can make it into a shrine for one of like uh your lost gods that you have, and like essentially leave them there with like a new place to live, which
Yeah.
I think is super interesting and super creative because there's so many ways that like, a DM could just introduce a little like this little um lost god character, and you can just go so deep into that, like just that itself.
Yeah.
And that's amazing.
Yeah. I believe our starting area, we were going over a bridge and there was a waterfall, and we eventually made it down to the base of the waterfall, and there were a bunch of pebbles. And I believe that we made all of the individual pebbles into lost forgotten gods
Oh,
and just started picking them up and carrying them with us. So all of us had just a pocket full of pebbles.
that's adorable. Oh, that's so cute. Oh my gosh. So much potential. So
Yeah.
much potential. Um, and like we were talking about earlier, with the character building as well, there is a specific part, and it's in each playbook, and it's asking one person to the left and one person to the right, and there's around like I think at least 4 questions, and you ask both of these people questions, but they have to be different questions, and it builds a relationship and even more like kind of lore and establish like things in the world. So
Yeah.
one of the questions is, which of my small and forgotten gods did you rescue and give to me?
Yeah.
Do I listen to you when you feel small and forgotten? Like, it's kind of like building a relationship and building some more like connection, like with these other characters, with answering these questions, which is something in Powered by the Apocalypse games as well. But these again are more intimate. Like, this is like a part of who I am, and how did it like affect my relationship with you in this way? Like, what kind of god did you rescue and now that I have? It's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much there to build on.
I agree. It's amazing. Again, I can't wait to play someday because it will be very fun.
Yeah.
But enough talk about like there's so much in this book, and again, I've only read the like first maybe like 60-ish pages, and it's like 200 over 200 pages. So I don't know what all the book covers, but let's put that aside for now. And I would like to ask you, Jamie. Not Jamie. I'm sorry. I have a lot of friends.
Either
with
way,
J's.
it's fine.
I have a lot of friends with J names. I have a Jamie. I have a Jamie. I have Jules. I have Jay. But I would love to ask you to share some stories of the games of Wanderhome that you played.
Yeah, so we only, I think, played 2 or 3 games because it was like a cozy game in between our D&D games when some of our players couldn't make it for scheduling issues. So we built it up so that anyone could come and go and just enjoy themselves and spend time with each other. And we started off building a location we called Natasha's Hollow, which was this like cave area that we were going into. We were going over a bridge with a waterfall, and a lot of the story started off with us coming in through that bridge. We were traveling with a caravan of capybaras.
Oh my god, that's so cool.
Which was a lot of fun. So we got really into the role-playing of these capybaras and coming up with characters to interact with as the capybaras. And at one point, our sort of facilitator person was like, we should probably move on. We're spending, because we had spent like 2 or 3 hours just on the bridge interacting with capybaras at this
Sometimes
point.
that's just how it needs to be. Sometimes you just interact with capybaras for like 3 hours, and that's okay. That's all right.
We were having
That's
a grand
perfectly
old
valid.
time. Yeah. So one of our we were still working on figuring out how everything works. One of our big decisions, I call it a big decision, but it sounds relatively small because we are a bunch of indecisive people pleasers. One of the caravan wheels broke down, so we were stuck on the bridge for a little bit, tried to fix the wheel. Some of the caretakers, forgotten gods, got out and tried to help with the wheel.
Aww.
And it was very cute to have those interactions as we traveled with the capybaras and with each other. And I forget what they're called. The shepherd, Turmeric, she had a herd of bumblebees that kept getting into trouble.
That is
one of them
amazing playbook. It is such an amazing playbook.
I love it. One of them was a great big bumblebee named Kingsley, who flew down below the bridge to go investigate, and we didn't know where he went for a while.
My heart.
But he came back a little bit later, and then I decided that my character Ribbon was terrified of flying. And at one point, they had to get on the bumblebees and fly down from the bridge to get where they were going.
Aww. And Ribbon's a silky chicken.
Yes, so they could only really fly for short distances. So they were not very fond of flying, but so we had like a scene where everybody got onto the backs of the bumblebees and Ribbon was kind of freaking out, and Louise, the dancer peacock, was trying to calm them down, and they did some interpretive dance as they were flying the bees down.
Oh, that is so sweet.
Yeah. So when we got to the bottom, there was the waterfall and a bunch of pebbles, and we got into philosophical conversations about pebbles and then collecting the pebbles. And I think that's where we left off of that session. I remember, I don't know if it was this one or the next one, but at some point there was a giant vulture that came in with a mouse who was riding it, who was like selling their wares with a vulture. Which was another thing that one of the people came up. It's written in a different pen color, so I'm not exactly sure when it happened. But
happened at some point.
I thought that was really cute because it was one of those things where somebody just came up with something and did it, and then we had that little interaction, and then we continued.
Absolutely. Oh, that sounds adorable. And like how because I know this is part of at least like the setting for Haith. It's like, so essentially there's all like these animals that are like kind of the quote unquote people, like and then essentially the bugs in this game are like pets, and like what would like not livestock in like a bad way, but like livestock and like pets and stuff like that, which I thought was super freaking cute, especially with like little interactions like between like little bugs and creatures. Just sounds adorable.
Yeah, very cute. I don't know if we wrote down exactly what we came up with for the locations because we kind of just jumped in and went with it as we went. So we named the place and then just went at it, which was a lot of fun. And then once we had gotten to the lower area below the bridge, we decided to transition to another area that we named Everport, which was this slimy cave area that opened into this like lava cave that was really interesting, and we decided that one of the players was going to take the lead because her character was from a carnival that we weren't sure if it was real or not, and apparently there was a boat down here that would take you to the carnival, so she took control of the port area that was in this cave in Everport.
I love that.
And it was really, really fun. My character, Ribbon, got a little overstimulated by all of the lava and asked for sunglasses, and then the captain of the ship just threw ink on their spectacles and called them sunglasses.
Honestly,
so I think
close enough.
yeah, it was very cute. And I think that's where we ended that experience because we were going to go to the carnival in the next session, but we didn't get to that. But it's a lot of really interesting stuff, and it's a great way to do your world building in pieces and spend like one session in an area And then when you're ready to move on to the next area, you end the session and then come back with the new sessions. It's sort of like a fresh start, but also a continuation.
Exactly, yeah. That's what I also appreciated with reading through the book is they mentioned that, like, kind of ending it, where it felt right. And like each session can just be a different area you go to. And with kind of taking the lead and with all of that, how much did you guys use like the tokens in your game that you played?
So, we didn't actually end up using the tokens as much, because we kind of trust each other implicitly. We would just kind of bring something up and everybody would be like, go for it. We didn't really use the tokens to change aspects of the setting or the game. We just kind of brought things up. A lot of us forgot that the tokens existed. And we were just kind of rolling with it. I think the tokens are a great way to work through the story when you don't know that the people know the people you're playing with as well. Because it's a good way to make sure everybody is contributing equally. No one's bringing things up over and over and over again, unless like you have that person as the facilitator or the guide.
Yeah.
It's a great way to make sure everybody has a say in what's happening.
Absolutely. And it could be good in groups as well that are more uncomfortable with the idea of like just being able to like speak up and like say they want like a thing to happen.
Yeah. So I think it's a great tool. We just didn't end up using it because we didn't find that we needed it.
That's honestly completely fair, and that's where the flexibility of the game comes in. You can just kind of, that wasn't something you guys needed, so you didn't use that.
Yeah.
And I think I remember there's almost, don't remember where they are in the book, but there's like almost these moves that you can do. And it's like
there's specific things especially built into the characters that are like, these are things that you can always do. And it'll be like asking a question or for the poet, some things you can always do are self-deprecate.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Cite your sources in hopes that they can help. Provide a new perspective others might not have. Ask what used to be here. Ask, can you explain? Stuff like that, which is another great way if you're if you enjoy roleplay but you're not used to it yet. I know some people it takes a while to get comfortable with roleplay because it's something they're not used to. I was a theater kid, so I started playing with other theater kids and we just went for it.
Absolutely.
But I love that Wanderhome builds that in as a way to start, and if you're not sure what to do, you can do these things.
Absolutely. And as someone who was introduced to role-playing games in a way of role-playing wasn't really explained or like introduced, like role-playing the concept of role-playing and playing as your character wasn't really introduced, it took me a very long time to get comfortable with it because D&D, which has been the only game I've played so far, doesn't necessarily, other than like the personality traits and stuff like that from backgrounds that can help. But there's not a lot of structure for roleplay in D&D, especially if you're playing a very combat-heavy game or a very a game that doesn't really allow too much roleplay in it. So Wanderhome is a fantastic way, especially if you want to improve on your roleplay and get more comfortable with it. Just from my point of view of like knowing what I struggled with and like how it was like, that was the whole big thing for me. If that is something you struggle with, Wanderhome would probably be a very great opportunity to get more comfortable with role playing and get used to it and have it be like a fun experience. Like this is a fun
Yeah.
collaborative experience with your friends where you guys are just kind of chilling and doing the story.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great way to get into it. Like I said, it really reminds me of role playing on the playground as a child.
Yeah.
I used to play Owls of Ga'Hoole with my friends a lot in elementary school, and it really reminds me of that.
Oh, that's adorable. Oh my god. Yes. I mean, like, role playing games, I mean, if you like really just kind of dumb it down and don't think about mechanics, it is purely just playing pretend and making up stories with your
Yeah.
friends. It's purely just
Yeah.
what you did as a kid, except, just with more structure and
Yeah.
sometimes more like rules and mechanics, but like everyone's just playing games like they did when they were a kid, and that is so enjoyable, and that's why I think role playing games are such a release for people. It's just getting out like kind of this like kid energy, like just like letting it out and being able to express it and have fun and not being able to worry about real life, and like you can just kind of lose yourself in it and not having to worry about
Yeah.
everything going on, and just like this is a time I can have fun and play pretend with my friends.
Yeah. Yeah. And Wanderhome is a great way to get back into that mindset, I think.
I would
Because
100%
sometimes it's
agree.
hard.
Yeah, again,
you're doing adulting, and it's hard to get back into the mindset of, oh, I don't have a care in the world. I'm just gonna be this little animal for a few hours.
especially if you think it's also some people might think it's a little embarrassing, like
Yeah.
I'm an adult, like I shouldn't do this, but like if you let go of the idea that it's embarrassing, it's sure it can seem
It's just
embarrassing,
fun.
but yeah, it's fun. Like once you get into it and get comfortable and like see what it like, it's you're playing pretend, but you're like playing through a story, and you're doing the world building, and you're with your friends. Like it's more than just like a silly game. It's
Yeah.
so much more than that people don't really realize.
Yeah. And I think it just takes time through playing the game to realize that. And that's where a
100%
lot
agree.
of people don't get it, because they don't like get the chance to jump in and play the game, or they don't want to take that leap, which is understandable. It's if it's out of your comfort zone, that's how it is. But it's a great way to connect with your inner child, I think.
Yeah, and especially in this game, there's a lot of improv, very improv heavy,
Oh, yeah.
because like pretty much I don't think, like I guess if you're just sticking to one guide or like rotating guides, you could do some prep, but I think it pushes the fact of like, just kind of do it as you go. And I think if you
Yeah.
want to challenge yourself with more improv and stuff like that, Wanderhome would also be a fun challenge for that, where it's a more casual environment where you can kind of have fun and not worry about it being too serious off the bat,
Yeah.
and be able to get used to that, because I know that's something I'm definitely wanting to challenge myself more with, is improv, because
Yeah. I think it's great, especially with a group, because you'll bring something up and you'll say, "What if this happened?" And other people will go, "Yes, and build on it."
react, and then you can react to that, and then like it then just flows the conversation.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's really fun.
I thought just a cute narrative game about traveling as animals would like so much potential,
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh. And I full credit to the person who wrote this is named Jay Dragon. Credit to them.
Such a cool name.
It is such a cool like dragon, like come on. But
Yeah.
full
You
credit.
go, J Dragon.
Yeah, you go. Because again, this is just this is an amazing oh my god, words. This is an amazing RPG. especially compared to some of the other ones I've read, this is just, again, it's in its own category. It's just its own thing. It's a cozy RPG that makes you all warm and fuzzy because you just get to hang out with your friends. So just good
Yeah.
on you for making this. Awesome job. I really want to play it. I'll be sad if I don't.
I'm sure you'll get to play it at some point.
One day.
I definitely want to play it again. Scheduling is just a nightmare with a group of like 6 adult full-time job people.
True, very true. Did you when you played this, did you play online or in person?
Online. Yeah, this is a group of people that I only had known online until just recently, where some of us got to meet in person.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's also something I was thinking of is how different the experiences also would be in person versus online, because obviously there is a little bit of disconnect with it being online.
Yeah.
But I still think, again, you can, and I guess the lovely thing about it as well is you guys could just be in a call. You don't need to have
Yeah.
like a whole setup with sheets and stuff like that. You can just like hang out in a call and, just like play the story. And again, it just reminds me of like setting up games with like my group so much. We'll
Yeah.
just hang out in a call and, create our characters and just talk about their lives. And it's so fun.
If you enjoy the concept and experience of session zeros,
Yeah.
Wanderhome is the game for you.
Yes, I think that is the best example. If you like Session Zero, play Wanderhome.
Yeah. Yeah, because we were just kind of in a Zoom call because we play over Zoom. And since we didn't have any combat or sheets or anything, I like to have something to do with my hands. I usually fiddle with dice.
Of course.
We didn't use dice. So I sat down and I just sketched out all of the characters as we were playing. And it was a lot of fun.
And I love the opportunity for that. Like, you can sketch out characters. You could write a poem, like, in your character's, like, perspective. You can
Yeah.
you can make art of the areas that you're going to. You can, like, write lore for things that you're, like, introducing into the game to kind of share with the group. And that's what's amazing with it being so collaborative, is that can do these little things while you're playing because you're not having to worry about a character sheet and combat and abilities and all of that. You can kind of like you can play the game in such a different way because you can write and you can draw and you can like have more thinking space to like be able to like do these fun little projects and contribute so much more to the game.
Yeah, it's another thing if you like with the session zeros, if you like writing backstories for your character, if you like the world building aspect of that, and you want to contribute that in a more collaborative and open way. I know a lot of people write backstories and like to have them come out as the story goes, but you're so excited. You're like, I wrote this thing and I want everybody to know, but they can't know because it's a big secret.
And
sort of thing like that.
Exactly,
the collaborative storytelling really leans into that.
The collaborative storytelling, even though obviously there can still be secrets, I feel like it's so much easier to be open about it. Like, you can tell the people about because part of the game as well is like you guys have been together for a while. You'd know things about each other. And that's why there's like kind of those relationship building questions at the end of the playbooks. Because like you've been together. So you can tell people about like, this is the place I came from. And the beauty of it is you can fully decide the place that you're from. You can design it. You can say what's there. You can make it all up on your own and it be your own thing. And like, let's say you go there one day, you can control like not even the narrative, but you can have you could be almost more like the guide in that area because you built this place.
Yeah, and that's what we were starting to do in the Everport location, where we let the one player take the lead, who we were kind of leaning towards her narrative in the story.
Which is really fun, and a great way to, like, again, kind of bring all the characters in instead of it being like kind of a DM relaying the information that they've done to you. It's bringing everyone in and, like, discovering everything, playing
Yeah.
everything. There's something I was going to mention. Oh, in the base, like, setting, there is a whole thing with, like, the seasons and the
Yeah.
year, like the year change and stuff, which I thought was fascinating. So basically,
Yeah.
in Wanderhome, there are seasons change throughout the game, and you can kind of decide the pacing of these. And there are 5 seasons, which I think there's like 2 months in each season. So there's 5 seasons with 2 months. And in the book, they actually, like, kind of give you a base of, like, what each of these months are, and you can decide to kind of just choose one of these for your setting to kind of give more flavor to the world you're in. So the one is Snow Blanket. It's when there's heavy snowfall, everything's covered in snow, like, all, like, just, you know deep winter. And let's say you're in deep winter and you're going on a journey and you come to this new place and you kind of you design it, then you kind of have to think with these, like, seasons in mind, how would that work, like, how would the
Yeah.
heavy snowfall work in this area? And sometimes you might not be in an area where there's heavy snowfall, but there's also fun, like we were mentioning, we were talking about earlier, ways to kind of take the prompts of, like, the labyrinth. Like,
Yeah.
labyrinth doesn't mean a maze, it could mean just getting lost in an area. This have the, like, snow blanket, if you're in a desert, could mean something completely different depending on how you, like, kind of shape it in your mind. And beauty of it as well is kind of the places that you go are very like, everyone's kind of deciding and thinking of ways how it would work, which is a super fun, like, collaborative exercise to do.
Yeah. And I think we didn't get into the seasons quite as much because we were still working on understanding the game,
Mm.
and we started out a little bit simpler. But I think the seasons are really great for people who want to go more in depth with the locations and maybe visit a location more than once in a
Mhm.
different time of year and see how it changes based on that season and time of year. So I think the seasons are really great, especially for long-term play when you want to spice things up a little bit.
Absolutely. And the beauty also that comes with the seasons is after every season, there's essentially a holiday.
Yeah.
And during these holidays, like, in the game, like, this is also where there's some structure. Every holiday is essentially a advancement. You get to advance your playbook. So you can, like, get you're able to do more things or make, like, decisions, stuff like that, when you experience these holidays, because they're, like, timed to reflect. And like, a beautiful thing about the holidays is, depending on where you are, it's completely different. And you as a group can kind of decide, what would this holiday look like here. The one, I think, at the, like, end of what would be like the autumn is called Candle Feast. And you can
Yeah.
decide to have that holiday and you're in this place. What is their interpretation of Candle Feast in this place?
Yeah.
Which also gives some very fun opportunities for world building based off of other prompts.
Yeah. And it's great if you enjoy things in D&D like harvest festivals.
Mm-hmm.
You get to build that sort of thing in your locations with the holidays.
Absolutely. And I guess from the holidays and the seasons, I kind of want to talk about the advancements, and more specifically, the advancement of retiring your playbook,
Yeah.
which is essentially, there's a few ways that you can interpret this. But retiring your playbook would mean that the character you are playing is essentially done with their journey. And I love the way the book approaches this, in the way of, just because your character is done with their journey doesn't mean they're gone. You can encounter them still in the world. You can even have them potentially like be an NPC tagging along on adventures, like on like short journeys and stuff like that, and they can still be involved with the world, but you just don't want the world and the journey, but you just don't, like, that character is finished. You have gotten to a point.
You just want to try something new.
Exactly. Or you've gotten to a point, because the whole thing as well, Wanderhome, there's a question that you ask yourself at the beginning of every session, which is, where is my home? Or where is home? And kind of the whole thing is, you guys are journeying throughout this entire place, and there might be a time that you find somewhere that your character is going to call home, and that's where they're going to stay. And
eventually they wander to their home, and then they stay there.
Exactly. And that just makes me like, it just makes me like sad, but also like sad in a happy way. Like, you get kind of you get to get your character to a point in the story that you're happy before you essentially retire them. They are done, they are finished. And as someone who's played quite a few D&D games that I've never been able to finish and give my character a good like ending, or like that's their story complete. This just makes me like
satisfying conclusion.
Yeah, this makes me like a happy sad, because it's like a satisfying conclusion. You get like your character is home.
Yeah. And I think Wanderhome is a great game for that, especially you know, we didn't play a lot of games, but you're able to solo it as you go on and kind of imagine where your character went from there and give them their own ending if you need that sense of conclusion.
Exactly, I agree. It's just a lot of opportunities, and again, a lot of flexibility and freedom to, you can play a whole game and not find a conclusion for your character, but because there is a solo mode, you could just write it up. You could do it.
Yeah.
And it can make complete sense in the fiction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man. Again, this game just like touches me. Like touches my heart. And like, I'm so genuine when I say I want to play it so bad, because it seems like such a fun time. Just so, like, it seems like it would be relaxing to play.
Yeah, yeah. It was a great way for us to de-stress after a long week. A lot of times, you know, if we can't get together, or D&D schedules just don't work out, and we just want to sit down and play together. We played Wanderhome. At one point, we played The Quiet Year, a map-making game. It's a great way to just hang out. It's a great way to hang out.
It's a great way to hang out, almost with, like, it's almost like hanging out with a purpose.
Yeah.
Like, you're there to hang out. It's just like, you guys can also do like this game, you know? It's like fun. Like additional, like you don't have to have the game to hang out, but it's like additional fun that you can add to it, just with being able to, you know, work on a project almost. Like you're doing something.
It's a way to bond.
Yes, exactly. A way to bond and a way to just have a fun time.
Yeah.
Oh, so I'm looking through the playbooks and the Vagabond. One of their choose 2 crimes you've been falsely accused of and 2 you're actually guilty of, and one of them is falling in love with the wrong person at the wrong time.
Yeah.
So sad.
Yeah. I love that they have silly things. They have really serious things. You can do whatever you want with it. You can be cheating at cards, or be accused of grand larceny, or killing a god.
The possibilities are endless.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love as well when they introduce the playbooks. There's like 15 playbooks in like the main book, which I think there's only this book, so I don't know why I said the main book. It's 15 playbooks, which is a lot, and I'm pretty sure they also say that everyone should play something different, so that everyone's different. What
Yeah.
they support when they introduce the playbooks, they're like, once you like get more comfortable in the game, you can just make your own.
Yeah.
And like the playbooks are so simple to do as well that it would be very easy to just make your own because you're not having to worry about balancing mechanics and stuff like that. You just have to do prompts, and it's fantastic.
Yeah. And the playbooks they have are so creative, but you can also think of things like a lot of them are inspired by occupations.
Mhm.
You have like the shepherd, the teacher. You could do something like the blacksmith and make your own playbook about this character that's a blacksmith that's traveling.
Yeah, and like, maybe rumors about their work and things like that, or weapons that they've made that could be like potentially famous, like things like that. Like there's so many interesting ways to get into it and make it interesting just from the simple prompt of a blacksmith,
Yeah. So I think they give you a lot of options and show you how much flexibility you can have with those options. And I think once you've played enough and maybe you want to retire your character and come up with something completely different, there's a lot of leeway to do that.
Mm-hmm. And as well, once you actually play through and you make a character again, there might be decisions that you make completely different because you played.
Yeah.
I mean that's true of any RPG. Like you kind of go into an RPG in a certain way, like, okay, I'm going to make these kinds of decisions because I think these are what matter, or this is what these are kind of the decisions I think are important without even knowing the game. And then making another like character after, it's like, okay, completely differently this time, like actually having experience and knowing what I'm doing. And I think the beautiful thing of this is there's no wrong way to do it though. And you can just
come up with something that you enjoy.
Exactly, you can just make
and
these
you want to
decisions.
explore. Yeah.
It's just such a fun game. And again, I'm very excited for the time that I will be able to play it. Because again, there's just so much to explore, so much to do, so many different ways to play it, and I just kind of want to play a little bat.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wanted to play a little silky chicken because I love chickens.
Silkies are so adorable as well. I mean, they're
so soft.
I used to have silkies, and they were so goofy.
Yeah, chickens in general are just goofballs.
I mean, chickens are goofballs, but they also will strike you down.
Yeah, they're goofballs with a lust for blood. Like, if you were the size of a chicken, they would not hesitate to just tear you to pieces.
Birds are also just absolute heathens.
They remember that they were dinosaurs and are mad about it.
What has a vengeance? Swans. Swans are evil. Swans.
Yeah.
I was once.
And geese, too.
Yeah. I was once chased by a swan.
Doesn't surprise me.
It could have been a geese. A goose. Was it a goose or a swan? I think it was a swan. It was
Both
one of them.
them are very angry.
Yeah, they're all angry. It was one of them, and it was very upsetting.
Yeah.
Goofy birds. Oh my god. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to bring up. I think that was
Other than
yeah, I mean,
other than if you haven't heard of Wanderhome and want to learn more, go buy it and
yes,
support the author because it's really wonderful.
please do. The physical book is gorgeous. The PDF is great. Either one's a great a great option. Support the author, get the book, enjoy the game. Even if you're not going to be able to like play it immediately, even just reading through the book is, perspective changing. It's just you can view
Yeah.
things in different ways, and that's what I found. Like that's one of my favorite things with like kind of getting into these RPGs. Even though I don't really have the time yet to start them, I read through the books anyway because I like getting the different perspectives and seeing how they present the information. So I 100% recommend reading through Wanderhome. Even though I didn't get all the way through at like after this at some point, I'm going to read the rest of it just to see, what else they present as information.
Yeah.
Plus the art is beautiful.
Yeah, even if you just want to like look at cute little animal illustrations, it's probably worth it.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I'm like scrolling through the PDF right now, and this beautiful like orange and yellow like autumn like nature scene with like a stag beetle just came up, and it's gorgeous. So just, I mean, buy the book for the art and then play the RPG later. It's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you are in the market, if you play D&D or any kind of RPG game where there's combat and a lot of mechanics and you just want to role play with your friends and you like the session zero and the world building and making your backstory and, hanging out with your friends, play Wanderhome. It is probably what you are looking for in the game. It is a cozy game. It is a feel-good game where you can explore other topics, but the base idea of it is just having fun with your friends. And
Yeah.
I 100% recommend this game, and it's its own experience. So go buy it. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I think that's all we have for today. And I want to thank you, Jay, for coming on and talking with me about this.
Yeah, happily.
For like telling me about it in the first place, because I had no idea about this until we talked.
Yeah.
And then like
it's such a wonderful game.
yeah, after that I'm like, what is this? And then I like started looking through it. It's absolutely amazing. Like, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for recommending it and like just sharing your stories with it as well. Like, picking up the pebbles of like the forgotten gods and putting them in your pocket. Like that's just so cute. And like, bickering talking with traveling capybaras on a bridge for 3 hours. Like it's those moments that make this game something very special. So thank you so much for sharing them.
Yeah, it's really interesting how impactful, because we only played like 3 or 4 sessions, and 2 of those were like going over the rules and the book and stuff. But I still have very vivid and warm memories of our silly little adventures.
Absolutely. I mean, like that's just the best endorsement right there. Like I've only played 3 sessions, yet it's like such an impact. But yeah, I think that's where we're going to end it today. Again, one last thanks to you, and then thank you to anyone who is listening right now. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and again, completely recommend Wanderhome. Please go check it out. It is by J Dragon, and it is just a beautiful game.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the RPG Goblin. I really hope that you enjoyed it. Again, please check out Wanderhome if you haven't yet. It is an absolutely stunning game, and I 100% recommend playing it. The author is J Dragon, and you can find the book on their site. Jay's social media is in the description below, along with the RPG Goblin social media as well. Next episode will be coming out February 17th, and it will be all about a game called Blades in the Dark. And I am very excited for it to come out, and I hope that you are as well. So, see you next episode.